Hello, I'm Robert Schnase, Bishop of the Missouri Conference. When I think about my own call to ministry, it's not like there was one single event that just totally turned my life around. It's rather that it was like a constellation of stars that it took a while for me to see the whole pattern and where it was leading. And many of those bright points were the relationships that laity had with me. I remember Dan Lloyd and Bill Deviney and Pam Yantz and different youth sponsors and volunteers around the church, and their role in my own call to ministry. It was very subtle and nuanced, but it was very powerful. It was that they noticed me. It's that they would notice that I was curious about the spiritual life and willing to help. They listened to me. They talked with me. They invited me in to help with various forms of ministry, and those were my earliest exercises in practicing ministry. When we think about the call to ministry, there are many roles that are important in this, and I simply want to express my appreciation to you for considering how you become one of these call connectors, one of those people in your own local church who's just has a kind of attentiveness and awareness to the people, young people and people of all ages who may just be wrestling with a call to ministry. How do we encourage them? How do we listen to them? How do we notice them? You play a vital role in this. As a bishop, I assign pastors to congregations, and often I kind of jokingly say, I cannot send to you anybody who you do not send to me. Every pastor in the United Methodist Church was formed in the early points of their spiritual life in a congregation. And that just lifts up this significant role that you play in this. Thank you for what you're doing, and God bless you.
Hello, my name is Karen Hayden, Director of Pastoral Excellence in the Missouri Annual Conference. Romans 10:14. How are they to call on one in whom they have not believed? And how are they to believe of whom they have never heard? We thank you for your consideration of those whom God might be calling into pastoral ministry in our annual conference. So often we wonder, how is it and where do those pastors come from? Of course, they come from the local church and faith communities that we have around us. And yet, sometimes we forget, as local churches and faith communities, our role in raising up and noticing, naming, and nurturing those candidates for ministry. You are here because you are considering what it is to become a call connector. Those people that after God has placed a call on someone's life, or is beginning to place a call in someone's life, you are able to speak that into their lives or able to help them hear in a new and different way. So we thank you for your place in this. As the Missouri Annual Conference places an emphasis on the culture of call, I always like to remind people that we are not about a culture of call because there is some shortage of clergy and we need to replace ourselves, or that we're worried about the institution and the church. Those might be things that are factored into why people are thinking about numbers of clergy, but we're about a culture of call because it is what we are supposed to do. It is what we are supposed to do as people who celebrate discipleship of others and who are a part of helping connect people in knowing what their vocation is in all life ministry. Specifically here, though, we speak of those that are called to a vocation of Christian service, a lifetime of ministry in the church. And we begin today by sharing a little bit of one church's role in a person understanding their call to ministry.
I first received my call at a very young age, around 8 years old, at church camp. And I wasn't really sure what that meant. I just knew that God was calling me into ministry of some sort. And at the time I was attending a church that didn't believe in the ordination of women, so I wasn't sure what to do with what I was hearing. I thought that what I was hearing was wrong, and so I denied it and ran away from it. And then later I married my husband, who is United Methodist, and we started to attend a United Methodist church in Washington, D.C. And about 2 months into our stay there was a pastoral transition, and we had a female minister. And all of a sudden, a light bulb went off that this was possible and that God could be calling me to do something like this. Members of the congregation started identifying my call for me, even though I wasn't verbalizing it at that time. And it became a running joke at meetings where people would say, when Trista goes to seminary, or when Trista answers her call. And I wasn't ready to admit it at that time, that that's what I was hearing as well. So I just kept that quiet and kept in prayer with God about what all of this meant. And it wasn't until a Sunday, when we were waiting for communion to start, the pianist was playing some music to get us ready for communion. And I heard our bell ring, which is the bell that our homeless neighbors would use when they were coming in to use the facilities and to have a lunch that we would cook for them every Sunday. And I went to the door and I invited them in and I said, it's not time for lunch yet, but we're still in worship and you're more than welcome to come and join us in worship. And I remember the guy looked at his clothes and he said, are you sure we're welcome? And I said, absolutely, you can sit with me. And he said, no. Are you sure that we are welcome? And I said, come, sit down in the pew with me. And we went in right as communion was starting. And we sat together, and as soon as the pastor said, the elements have been prepared, everyone is invited to come and eat from the Lord's table, the woman of the couple jumped up and ran to the front of the sanctuary. And she was the first one to receive communion that day. And that was the day that I went to the communion rail and knew the answer to what God was calling me to do. And that was to ensure that everyone was welcome at the Lord's table.
The Book of Discipline, paragraph 258 of the United Methodist Church says that the role of the SPRC committee is to interpret preparation for ordained ministry and the Ministerial Education Fund to the conference. That they are also to enlist, interview, evaluate, review, and recommend annually to the charge conference laypersons and persons for candidacy in ordained ministry. That's important to realize that, again, that it is part of what we do, a charge of the local church to notice and name those persons for ministry. But even before that, as a part of the baptismal covenant, we pledge to do all in our power to increase the candidate's faith, confirm their hope, and perfect them in love. In our baptismal response as a congregation, we say we will surround these persons with a community of love and forgiveness that they may grow in their service to others. How do they know if they are not taught? How do they know of their gifts for ministry if they're not named among a faith community? I mentioned that God does the calling. However, throughout Scripture, we see many places where God uses other persons to help the minister see and hear their call. One example is 1 Samuel 3. The boy Samuel was serving God under Eli's direction. And you know the precursor to this story and how it is that Samuel even was with Eli here. His mother had promised him into service. And this was at a time when the revelation of God was rarely heard or seen. One night, Eli was sound asleep. His eyesight was very bad. He could hardly see. It was well before dawn, and the sanctuary lamp was still burning. Samuel was still in bed in the temple of God where the chest of God rested. And God called out, "Samuel, Samuel." Samuel answered, "Yes, I'm here." And then he ran to Eli saying, "I heard you call. Here I am." And Eli said, "I did not call you. Go back to bed." And so he did. God called again, "Samuel, Samuel." And Samuel got up and went to Eli and said, "I heard you call. Here I am." Again, Eli said, "Son, I did not call you. Go back to bed." This all happened before Samuel knew God for himself. It was before the revelation of God had been given to him personally. God called again, "Samuel," the third time. Yet again, Samuel got up and went to Eli. "Yes, I heard you call. Here I am." That is when it dawned on Eli that God was calling the boy. So Eli directed Samuel, "Go back and lie down. If the voice calls again, say, 'Speak, God, I am your servant, ready to listen.'" And Samuel returned to his bed. Then God came and stood before him, exactly as before, calling out, "Samuel, Samuel." Samuel answered, "Speak, I am your servant, ready to listen." And God said to Samuel, "Listen carefully. I'm getting ready to do something in Israel that is going to shake everyone up and get their attention." Eli eventually realized that God was calling Samuel. I think it's important to hear in this story that although Samuel had been presented to God, it still hadn't become something personal for him yet to know. It took his mother, it took Eli, and above all, it took God's promptings for Samuel to even realize what he was being called to do. I wonder how, as an individual, you might be called to be an Eli. Often I hear stories about the women and men in churches who lay their hands upon little children in the church and simply say, "One day you might be a pastor too." Or perhaps it's the Sunday school teacher, the confirmation leader, the youth volunteer, the college-age mentor, or someone simply involved in the discipleship ministries of the church in a Bible study who speaks another word to someone. "I see something in you. How might God be calling you?" Then I wonder, how as a church might you be an Eli? How might your church become one of those churches that we call a calling church? Not necessarily one who manufactures a pastor every year out of the church, but it is a part of your culture, a part of your DNA to say, how is God using you in ministry? And that might be as a lay person or as a clergy person, but that people begin to hear that God uses all of us and all of our gifts in ministry. How might your church be a calling church? Are we intentionally offering up ministry as an exciting and fulfilling option for people in our congregations? Or is all we hear about is the mundane tasks of a pastor, or how hard it is to go through the process and how much it costs to go to seminary? You know, the kind of excuses that we use or the things we use to try to persuade people in other more professional opportunities of service and ministry in the world. I also like to point out that people haven't quit going to seminary. The numbers of seminarians are still up. It just might be that they are finding it less and less compelling to go back into the local church at the state of the church and ministry today. Are we making it a natural part of what we do in our ministry settings to ask our younger people if they have ever been prompted by God to consider a call to ministry? Does your church have a strategic plan? I know of a prominent professor of preaching today that tells a story in his youth. When he was graduating from college as a chemistry major, he shared with his church that he would be going on to get a PhD in chemistry. And his church said, "That's fine, but not this year. We have collected enough money for you to go to seminary this next year. And after 1 year of seminary, if you feel like it is God's will and what you need to do to go on and get your chemistry PhD, then we will surround you and support you in that. However, we see a call upon your life. We see the ways in which God has been working in your life and want you to further explore that option of ministry by going to seminary. Well, I've already told you he's a seminary professor today. And it's not that I think every church needs to be searching out and paying a year of seminary for someone to go to school, but the idea that they were noticing and naming the gifts of that person for ministry, and that he is now leading and teaching many, many other seminarians as he has for decades now. Which takes us to the Hannah Project. I hope that you have been able to look at the Hannah Project that is found online on our conference website. There are 5 standards that we are recognizing in churches that are calling congregations over this next year. Congregations that complete these 5 standards for recruitment and nurture will be recognized at the 2012 session of Annual Conference. One of the first standards is to celebrate a Ministry Sunday. On the calltoministry.org website, we have lots of examples and ideas for a church that might be considering a Call to Ministry Sunday. This is where you build a worship service around the call to ordained ministry. That might simply be a call to worship and a prayer throughout the service that names call. It might be an opportunity at the end of the worship service where you call forth persons who are exploring ministry. I know of a bishop who tells a story of when she first offered a call to ministry in her local church where she had been for several years and was uncertain whether or not there would be any response, and invited people to meet her after church in another room if they were exploring a call to ministry. It was as if she didn't want to embarrass herself or the church if no one came forward. After the service, she found dozens of people waiting in the room for her and has never missed another opportunity to name and claim persons who might be exploring a call to ministry. So I don't think that we need to worry about God being embarrassed, but that we need to continue to give those opportunities for people to come forward. So whatever way in which you might offer up a call Sunday. Another idea would be for the pastor, for herself or himself, to be able to share their call to ministry and invite people into conversation later. The possibilities are endless, and we look forward to what you have to bring to the Call to Ministry website about different call Sundays. The third standard is to sponsor a seminary student. Sponsor a seminary student from the Missouri Conference. And that might simply be receiving a name from the Center for Pastoral Excellence of a seminarian and saying, I will pray for this student this year, sending them greeting cards, birthday cards, holiday cards, care packages during finals. Or it might be that you support prayer and financially a seminary student in Mozambique. One of the things I want to point out here is that, again, we are not asking for a significant financial contribution if you are sponsoring someone from the Missouri Annual Conference, but that you simply remember them. Maybe it's that you put them in the back of your bulletin every week as a prayer person. And this is one way in which churches who might not have a lot of people who are coming out of their church and entering ministry have an opportunity to be a part of a call culture and support and name those people who are going through ministry. Simply to walk alongside someone that you've never met before but is already in the ministry candidacy process. Number 4, sponsor exploration of ministry event or sponsor a student. Every other year, the Global Church has a ministry exploration event, and that was held in November of 2011 in St. Louis. And in November of 2012, there is a Missouri exploration event, Mo Explo. And you have the opportunity to send a student there. Perhaps, again, there isn't someone from your congregation that would be wanting to go this soon, and you can simply financially offer $150 to sponsor another person to go to one of these events. Number 5, support the seminary scholarships. Support the Ministerial Education Fund apportionment line item for the conference. And I'm going back to number 2 now. Name a congregational call connector. In just a few moments, you'll be able to fill out a survey related to this video presentation, and you will be a call connector for your church. And you will be one of the persons responsible in your church for fostering a culture of call. You and your pastor and others who are available to youth and confirmation classes and all the other different opportunities may, again, consider ways in which you can notice and name ministry opportunities for those in your church. There are 13 things that you as a part of your church can do to be involved in creating a culture of call. These things are listed on the calltoministry.org website and are now available on this video. In order to raise persons, whether it be children, youth, college-age persons, young adults, older adults in your church who embrace Christian values, parents, sponsors, peers, need to be sure that they are living it out themselves. How is it that you recognize your baptismal covenant? How is it that you know that God has called you to be in a life of service to others? Whether or not you are called into ordained ministry or not, we are all called and given specific and certain gifts. So a question you might ask yourself is, who am I? Why am I here? And how might God be using me as a part of naming someone else's call to ministry? There are many other resources in which you can point a candidate or an exploring person if they want to just think about God's call upon their life, and those resources are also listed on the calltoministry.org website. We have shared with you many opportunities, many ways in which you can connect others to God's great vision and dream for their lives. Now we hope that you'll take just a few minutes and answer these questions and reflect on ways in which you can see your church being a part of this, whether that's in small ways or big ways. As always, the Center for Pastoral Excellence, myself and Jenny Gregg invite you to call us with questions, or our Call Culture Commission team are available to you and offering other ideas and support. We hope as a call connector, one of the very first things that you will remember is to share the things and the gleanings that you get around others' call to ministry back with your pastors so that they can be involved with this with you. God does the calling, but God also uses other individuals to help notice, name, and nurture those candidates along the way. Might you receive this time as an invitation to be a part of God's great vision and dream in the lives of other people. Thank you for your time.